Waiting for Tim now.
Okay.
Meeting's live.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the meeting of the South Planning Committee. I am Councillor David Evans, Chair of this committee. I am obliged to inform you that this meeting being live streamed, so members of the public will be able to hear the audio of the meeting and view the paper shown on screen. Should any committee member experience technical difficulties during the meeting, please contact the designated IT officer on the number they have already been given. Everyone is requested to mute their microphone unless asked to speak. Use the chat function.
He's gone.
I've gone.
Now he's back.
I'm back. Please only use the chat function to indicate a desire to speak, but nothing else, so that it's clear who is asked to speak in the debate and to be heard and listened to by audio feed.
Chairman, could you just remind us which the chat button is, please? Sorry.
Members are asked to ensure they present throughout the meeting, as you cannot vote on an item you have not heard all the debate. As a chair, I will interpret the council's existing standing orders in the light of the requirement of a remote participation, with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making the rules. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the committee to confirm their presence and any disclosure of pecuniary interest. I will ask everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the committee and officers, to introduce themselves each time before they speak. This is so those listening know who is speaking. As chairman, I'm reminded to disclose pecuniary interest when all matters to be discussed which are not included in the register of interest, and leave the meeting by turning off the camera and mute their microphone prior to the matter being discussed. Chair to read the members' names and ask them to confirm the presence of their interest. Right. David Evans, Chair of this committee. I have an interest in item number 6, so I should declare an interest and I shall leave the meeting. Councillor Turner.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman. Councillor David Turner, Much Wenlock, present. As regards item 6, which is situated in the Shropshire Hills area of outstanding natural beauty, I am a member of the AONB partnership and the management board, but have had no part to play in any comments made by the AONB, but I just mentioned that for the sake of completeness.
Andy Boddington.
Excuse me, Andy Boddington, Ludlow North, no interest.
Simon Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Simon Harris, ward member for Broseley in Shropshire. Item, which one are we on? The proposed dwellings north of Lee Road, Minsterley, Shrewsbury. It says 4.1.2, Shropshire Council affordable housing. There is amount of affordable housing on this application, and I'd just like to know that I'm a member of the Housing Supervisory Board and the chairman for Star Housing, which is Shropshire Council's housing arm.
Thank you. Nick Hignett.
Thank you, Chair. Nick Hignett, Councillor Lay Valley Ward. Item 5, proposed dwellings north of Lee Road, Minsterley. I am the ward member. I shall be making a statement on this agenda item, and then I shall withdraw from the meeting for the rest of the discussion and voting.
Thank you. Richard Huffer. Richard Huffer. Cecilia Motley.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I'm Councillor Cecilia Motley, representing the Corvedale division. In common with Councillor Turner, I also sit on the area of outstanding natural beauty management and partnership boards, and like him, I have had no part in this particular application of any sort whatsoever. Like Councillor Harris, I also sit on the Housing Supervisory Board. Thank you.
Councillor Tony Parsons.
Tony Parsons, Basin Hill, Colham and Sutton. Like Councillor Harris and Councillor Motley, I also sit on the Housing Supervisory Board.
Thank you. Councillor Mad Shinton.
Councillor Matt Shinton, Clibberry Mortimer Division. I have no interests.
Councillor Robert Tyndall.
I'm Councillor Robert Tyndall, representing Brian Clee Division. I too am a member of the AONB partnership with respect to agenda item 6, but I don't think, from what I've read of the report, the AONB have commented on this application.
Thank you.
I might be wrong. Thank you.
Councillor Tina Woodward, please.
Councillor Tina Woodward, Alvin Claverley Division, no interest, Chairman. Thank you.
I shall hand over item 6 to the Vice Chairman to chair that when it comes up on the agenda. Right. Could I have apologies for absence, please?
We have no apologies, Chair.
Could the council officers introduce themselves, please?
Richard Fortune, Principal Planner.
Andrew Shurakowski, Consultant Planner.
Kim Brown, Solicitor.
Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting held on the 20th of October. I move the minutes of the previous planning committee held on the 20th of October that circulated on the agenda papers to be signed as a correct record. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favour? Yes. I will now accept the minutes as a record unless anyone else indicates differently. Public questions?
No public questions, Chair.
Right. Are there any questions from the committee officer? No. Right. Right, we'll go on to item 5, which is proposed dwellings north of Lee Road, Minster East Shrewsbury. Could I have the officer to introduce it, please?
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Shurakowski, Consultant Planner. I'll run you through the slides here, Chair, and then I've got a few comments to make afterwards. So this is a reserve matters application for the development of a residential site involving 28 dwellings at Lee Road, Minster Lee. It relates to the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. Just so we're clear from the outset, Chair, when the original outline application was granted back in August last year, details of the access were included in the outline permission. So this only covers appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, albeit to some extent, obviously, the layout reflects the access arrangements that were made. If we can move on to the first slide, please. This is I think there's actually a location plan and a block plan which are essentially the same in the first two slides here. So this shows the location of the site. It's on the northwest side of Minster Lee. I think we can zoom in a little bit there. It's essentially a fairly open site to the north of the Lee Road and to the west of Horsebridge Road. As you'll have read in the report, it was a site that not only has it got a previous outline, but it's also got previous history, planning history involving the approval of planning permission for 15 houses on the northern part of the site, which is the fairly white open blank area there. And then there are 2 additional permissions which are covered the southern part of the site. There's an existing dwelling house at the very bottom end of the site. I don't know if we can just move the cursor in just to where the existing dwelling is there. I'll show you some photographs. The access would come off the Lee Road just in front of that particular house. There's actually a garage that's attached to the southwest side of that dwelling that would be demolished to make way for the access, and then the access road would run essentially northwest into the site. You'll see further north there's another building which is just where the site opens out, and that's a barn, and that too would be demolished. So there's an element of demolition involved in order to gain access to the site. So that's the location of it. The centre of Minster Lee is essentially to the right of the slide. If we can move on to the next slide, which I think is pretty well identical, actually.
Yeah.
So there we go. I won't repeat the comment because it's essentially the same slide, and then we can move on to the third slide, which I think shows the layout. So this is actually the layout of what's proposed. The original permission that was granted on here in, I think it was about 2014. Just looking at my notes here. Yeah, it was actually for 15 dwellings and just covered the northern part of the site. And then there were two other permissions granted at more or less the same time, well, over a period of a couple of years, which in total granted a consent for 18 dwellings. So what you've got essentially is an increase of an additional 10, but you need to bear in mind here that that's already been granted as an outline permission, so the principle is established. So what's not up for debate today, in essence, is the principle of the development, because that has been granted permission already. So this is really the application that comes back in for that detail with that particular layout. The composition of the dwellings here is that there would be 24. There's four detached dwellings, and the remainder are semi-detached. They're all 2-story. There would be an element of affordable dwellings, as is set out in the report. There's actually four affordable dwellings, just in terms of the split on that diagram that's in front of you. It's two blocks of 2. 4 affordable dwellings are in the 4 houses that sit alongside the southwestern boundary. I think it's where they've got grey roofs, if you can see them on that slide. The 2 middle ones, that's it. And then the 4 house detached dwellings are the ones either side of that with a brown roof. I don't know if we can show that with the cursor. Yep, and there's one just on the other side down there. And then there are 2 houses on the northwest boundary. It's the 2 in the middle that are the other 2 detached houses. So if we go up to the top and we find the 2 houses in the middle there, those are the 2 other detached houses. All the rest are semi-detached pairs. They're all 2-story. Material finishes are brick or render with a slate or tiled roof. A key part of the site here is obviously the open space provision, which is set out in the report, meets the open space requirement for the number of houses provided. If we just move on to the next slides, then I think there's just some details there of the designs. It's just to give you a flavour of these. I won't say too much about these, but if we just scroll through these are the semi-detached pairs. And if we just gradually scroll through these, it'll just give you an idea of the type and design of houses. They're all fairly traditionally designed. I think really to be in keeping with much of the development that's around them. And the next slide, please. And the next. That's it. Yeah. So it shows the mixture of brick and render. And then if we just carry on scrolling through slowly, they're all much of a muchness, but with a bit of variation. Some of the garages some of the houses have got garages. So those are the garage elevations. And then I think after this we've got some photographs, which I'll just run through 1 or 2 points which are relevant to some of the comments that have been made. So this is the property at the front of the site, and you can just see the garage that's on the left hand side of that red brick house. That where that access is where the access would go into the site, and the garage would be demolished. The barn immediately to the left is a grade 2 listed barn. Okay. You can see that there's visibility along the road isn't too bad, and I think if we scroll on to the next couple of slides, it shows us just the views in each direction. So that's the view looking east back towards the centre of Minsterley. And you can just see in the distance there is the junction with Horsebridge Road. There's a close-up of that junction, which I'll show you in a moment, because there are some relevant points. That's a slightly closer view. You can see on that photograph how at the junction, which is actually between the buildings, it's fairly narrow, and there is a point there which I think some of the representations have made about there being a lack of a footpath just on that first section of Horsebridge Road, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And if we can then scroll on to the next photograph. That's the view up Horsebridge Road, and you can that's the photograph. It shows you that there's no footpath provision on the layout plan. Not only would there be the main access into the south side of the site, but there would be a footpath access onto Horsebridge Road towards the northern end of the site. It effectively gives people the option of which way they come out of the site if they want to walk into Minsterley. One of the concerns here that you'll see from the third-party representations is that there is no footpath on this very southern end of Horsebridge Road. On the other hand, there is alternative access provision. There is a footpath further up, and again, I think we've got a photograph that will show that in a minute, albeit the footpaths are relatively narrow. And if we can move on to the next slide. This, I don't know why I want to go back to the layout plan. You may not have noticed it, and we can maybe go back to it in a moment. On the layout plan, there's currently a plot that's shown on the plan with 2 new houses that have been built. This is that particular plot where those 2 new houses have been built. Under the original 15-house planning permission that was granted for the northern part of the current application site, the intention had been to take access through through where these 2 plots are. That's obviously no longer the case, and the access is now onto the Lee Road. You'll see there is just a footpath there. There wasn't, in fact, a footpath in front of these 2 houses, but I'm not sure whether that's now been changed with the construction of these 2 houses. If we move on to the next slide, I think you'll see the view looking back south. Yeah, again, that gives you an idea that there is a footpath there, but it's not brilliant. And I think that may be the last slide. So yes, that's the last slide. So just to take you back to the report, you'll see in the report that there's no objections from the consultees and statutory consultees. There are a number of comments there, but there's nothing of any huge significance in terms of the consultation responses. There are, I think the local member is going to Councillor Hignett is going to speak shortly, and I think there's a comment there that you'll see from him, and there's also comments from Minsterley Parish Council, which raise issues about the layout and the pedestrian access. And I'll leave Councillor Hignett to speak to you about those. In essence, the key thing here is that this is a reserved matters application. So the principle is not up for discussion, nor are the issues around the access. There are issues related to the design, and we can maybe pick up on those in some of the discussion afterwards. But in essence, that's the application, Chair.
Thank you. Any public speakers on this matter will have submitted a written statement to be read in accordance with the revised procedures of public speaking. The local member may read their own or may ask elected the solicitor to offer their statement. Any statements?
Thank you, Chair. Just before we start on the public speaker statements, Councillor Tyndall's just asked if he could ask the planning officer a question.
Yes, that's no problem.
Yes, thank you. When this was an outline application, it didn't come to committee because I can't relate to this site at all.
Thank you. Yeah, in fact, it did come to committee, but of course it was when we had the old central committee as well, and it was a central committee application. So I think Councillor Hignett, in fact, was on that committee, so he will have the benefit not only of being the local member, but of actually having been at that committee. So the outline did come to committee, but I'm afraid it wasn't to this committee; it was to the old central committee.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, move on to the public speaker statements. The first is from Councillor Susan Lockwood on behalf of the Minsterley Parish Council, who says, 1. Although the original analysis reported by Berries on the history of the site was quite substantial for the outline application, there is still no firm historical note acknowledged that the field in question is the last ridge and furrow field in the village. The residents of Minsterley consider this field was left in perpetuity to the village and should not be built on. 2. Highways recommendation is still short on the detail of the site. Committee members are recommended to visit the site. Lee Road and Horsebridge roads are not wide. Horsebridge Road has no footpaths. Lee Road has intermittent footpaths up to the cemetery, which means that pedestrians have to frequently cross Lee Road to continue on a footpath. 3. There is a potential building site across from the Lee Road entrance to this site. for houses to be built on the home farm site. This would accentuate traffic. 4. It appears that the only safe transgress for pedestrians would be a proper crossing on both Lee Road and Horsebridge. 5. During weekdays, there is considerable footfall with parents and children from Park Meadow to and from the primary school, which is located on the A488 south of the centre of Minsterley. 6. Traffic is steady with agricultural farm equipment, i.e. tractors and HGVs passing through Minsterley in every direction. Without proper footpaths, pedestrians are at risk of being hurt. 7. There is no light on Horsebridge, where the 2 houses are presently being built. 8. All the conditions included in the original outline plan will be required to be met, especially those relating to bats, birds and hedgehogs. Also, prior to development, that the archaeological assessment has also been carried out. 9. It would seem reasonable to request that the homes to be built will be supplied with solar panels for electricity supply and will be planned to emit 0 carbon emissions in view of Shropshire Council's objectives for climate control by 2050. Also, there should be an electrical charge point for each home for vehicles. 10. It would also seem reasonable to suggest that some of the homes will be bungalows, as there is a need in the village for these. 11. Although the conclusion on the document states that there is not a flooding issue associated with this site, the Parish Council would suggest that there is. There is a flood action group which is, at this point in time, working hard to prevent future flooding on the A488 at Little Minsterley, Linden Fields, the Grove and at the bottom of Ashley, liaising with Shropshire Council Highways and the Environment Agency. 12. The stretch of road from the bridge over the Minsterley Brook, past the few shops and homes opposite the church to the mini roundabout where Lee Road continues and Horsebridge veers off to the right, is congested with parked vehicles, debris from the trees on the church grounds and general waste. Therefore, the proposed development of 28 houses, if it produced 56 more vehicles, not to mention delivery vans and Shropshire Council waste vehicles, would considerably increase this congestion. 13. There are no objections to the 2 houses within the agreed development area being built, but we do object to the building of 26 homes on land outside the area designated for development. The next speaker is Councillor Nick Hignett, local member, who has requested to read his own statement.
Councillor Hignett, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Nick Hignett, Ray Valley Ward. I accept that the residential development of this site has been granted, including access, but would ask the committee to consider the following points when making their decision. The access road to this development is narrow in places, and it is important that adequate lighting is provided along the new road. Indeed, it is imperative that the whole of the route through this estate is well lit. The officer's report states that the footpath link onto Horsebridge Road would allow those walking southwards into the village the choice to use the estate as a route to the village centre. On studying the plans, it is doubtful if members of the public will walk 3 sides of a square to arrive at the same place as one side, i.e. the roundabout on the junction with the Lee Road. We will not know the answer to this until the estate is completed, but I ask committee members to ensure that the lighting plan enables safe use of this route all year round. 28 new dwellings will add significantly to the pedestrians using the local roads in this area to walk to the amenities in the village. The roundabout area is already recognised as a pinch point for traffic, and we seem to have missed the opportunity to establish a safe crossing point here as a condition at the outline stage. However, I am sure that this issue will be raised again in the future. It is disappointing that further details of surface water drainage have not been supplied, as this was a condition of the outline consent. It would have been useful for committee members to have this information at today's meeting, rather than a separate discharge of conditions submission. It is also disappointing that archaeology consultees have not been more active regarding the development of this area, particularly with reference to the medieval usage of this as a ridge and furrow field. I would question how it can be right that the applicant only needs to satisfy themselves that they meet any requirements relating to EIA Agriculture England (2) Regulations 2006. Committee members perhaps see note 6.4.4 on their notes. Shropshire Council, together with many parish councils, have declared a climate emergency, and I would like committee members to consider whether adequate green measures have been included in this application in order for us to move towards our target of zero carbon emissions. With regards to the layout of the dwellings, I think it is acceptable, including the large green spaces, notwithstanding the missed opportunity to include some bungalow type properties. That's my statement. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you, Councillor Signet.
Okay, next Chair, we've got Stuart Thomas, the agent, who says, Chairman, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee today. Having read the comments from the parish council and local councillor, we would respond as follows. The principle of development of on this site has been established with the granting of outline planning permission for 28 dwellings. Since then, a lot of work has gone into developing the site layout and design, and we thank your officers for their professional input into this process. In respect of the access, the position of the access road was approved as part of the outline scheme, and it will be built to an adoptable standard with the inclusion of street lighting for the footpaths and roads. A footpath link is shown at the northern end of the site, leading off the end of the internal roadway. This would link to a pathway included in a previously granted planning permission for 2 dwellings in the land edged blue on the submitted plans that would then connect to Horsebridge Road. This footpath link would allow those walking southwards into the village along Horsebridge Road the choice to walk through the site to gain access towards the centre of the village. There is also the provision of a new footpath along the frontage of the site. In respect of drainage, then this will be attenuated to a greenfield runoff rate. We have made an application to Severn Trent for the drainage connection, and precise details will be provided as part of the conditions discharge. Both the drainage and road design will have to be designed in accordance with Shropshire's strict adoption standards. The development includes a good mix of housing with 4 designated affordable dwellings, 2 shared ownership and 2 social rented. There are only 3 4-bed properties on the site, with the remainder being 2 and 3-bed properties to ensure they are affordable and appropriate to the local market. The design will be to a high standard, and consideration will be given to incorporating solar panels and electrical charging points into the development. There is no policy requirement for this at present. However, the developers are local and want to build something the community can be proud of. The layout includes a new estate green space, and each dwelling has a good-sized garden area together with private parking. Several of the properties on the development will have chimneys with associated dual fuel burners installed. An archaeological assessment will be required prior to development commencing, together with a construction management plan. Both will need to be approved by the council but cannot be commissioned until a contractor is in place. There are no objections from any of your consultees, and approval of the application would deliver a much needed housing development for the local area, together with the associated affordable housing and SIL payments. We would therefore respectfully request that the application is approved.
Thank you very
and
much.
that's it for public speakers, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew, the planning officer, do you wish to come back on any points or confirm anything on that, please?
If you like, Chair, I could just sort of run through some of the issues there. I haven't noted down every single one, but I've made a note of the key ones, so I could just run through those because I suspect it'll anticipate some questions. So just to run through some of the points that have been made, and my notes here largely relate to the order of Councillor Hickmott's comments. Firstly, in relation to the lighting, as you've just heard, the intention is that the access road will be constructed to adoptable standard and will include lighting in it. There is a condition on the outline planning permission which covers lighting, so that before the development commences or before the lighting is installed, there'll have to be agreement as to what that lighting provision actually is. I think next Councillor Hickmott mentioned the issue of the crossing point on Lee Road. That unfortunately is one of those things, really, if we'd wanted to deal with it, it would have had to have been dealt with at the outline stage. It's an off-site matter, and it would have had to have been secured most likely through a Section 106 agreement. So I'm afraid that's one issue on which we have missed the boat. Drainage is another matter. Whilst the details are not included with this application, it's a requirement of the outline planning permission that the details of drainage will have to be submitted for approval. So that those have yet to come. I think the point was made that it's unfortunate in some ways that the submissions for the different conditions don't all come together. So we don't always see all the details together. But that's the applicant's prerogative in terms of how they choose to discharge the conditions. I think the next issue was the issue of the archaeology and the presence of ridge and furrow on the site. Again, that is something that was dealt with at the outline stage. There is an archaeological condition on the outline planning permission which will still need to be discharged. Obviously, the ridge and furrow would be lost, but there is a requirement to undertake a written to submit a written scheme of investigation and investigate what's on the site archaeologically and provide a record. So that's also been covered off in the outline planning permission. Councillor Hignett made reference to the agricultural EIA regulations, which are referenced on page 7 of the report in paragraph 6.44. The application in this case is not EIA development. Those particular EIA regulations are not relevant to the application because they relate to agricultural works on agricultural land and are not the town and country planning EIA regulations. So in fact they're not relevant in this case. Layout we've covered, and Councillor Hignett has made comment on that. He considers that to be acceptable. He did raise the issue of bungalow provision. That was something that was not expressly requested as part of the outline permission. So there's no requirement in the outline permission that there has to be bungalow provision. So that's one of those issues. Again, if we wanted to see it, we should have included it at the outline stage. I think those are the main points. Forgive me if I've missed anything there, but I'm sure members will ask additional questions if there's any other issues there that I've not covered. But I think those were the main points that were raised in the comments made.
Right, thank you, Andrew. I will now ask members of the committee for their comments. Please indicate on the chat function if you wish to speak. The solicitor will then let me know who is next to speak. So I now open it up to committee through the chat function, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. There's a comment from Simon Harris, Councillor Harris, about the listed building, but I think, has that been answered now, Councillor Harris?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's the photograph come up with it. You didn't. It doesn't show how close it is to the entrance, but when the photograph come up, it was apparent. Okay. Okay. Next, an indication from Councillor Parsons.
Councillor Tony Parsons, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I sat on the Central Planning Committee and heard this the application for outline permission, and there were many issues that were discussed at that meeting. It wasn't a straightforward sail through. There were a number of issues, and I'm slightly disappointed that 3 areas in particular have not progressed in a better way than they appear to have with this reserved matters item. The first one is the road, and a site visit. We had a site visit back in April 2019, and it was very useful because as you turn off from the middle of Minsterley towards this site, the road initially is very stop-start until you get to that mini island by the Horsebridge Lane. But after that, once cars have gone past the 2 roundabouts that are there, the speed of the traffic increases considerably going up the B road, and I think that some sort of crossing out of this site would have been extremely useful. The second issue that was certainly caused quite a lot of discussion at the previous meeting was the area to the northeast of this site towards the Grove area where there had been issues with flooding. And it's interesting to note in the minutes of that meeting, the Central Planning Committee of the 11th of April 2019, that the area planning manager is quoted as saying that a condition should be added to any permission granted to ensure the Shropshire Council drainage team were consulted in relation to the submitted drainage scheme. Now, we know that doesn't need to be done until development actually commences, but it's interesting that within our own report today in section 415, Shropshire Council should say no proposed drainage details, plan and calculations have been submitted for comment. So in 19 months, the proposed developer have not submitted any comments as to how they're going to deal with those flooding issues that were outlined back in April 2019. My third point is to do with the issue of the housing. I've been to many applications for outline planning permission where we've been told what we see before is only indicative and that things might change when it comes around to reserve matters. But now we're being told that the housing that was proposed at the outline stage is not able to be changed. I think that there is a case here for some bungalow provision, and it's interesting that back in 2019, in that report there, the reasoning for increasing the number of houses on the site from 18 up to 28 was to give a greater variety of house types and sizes, including a greater number of smaller housing units. So again, I'm a little disappointed that the plan that's come forward at the moment doesn't include any bungalows, which according to the local council are needed within this particular area. So I'm not saying I'm voting against this application, but I'm disappointed with the progress that's been made since the outline plan was approved.
Thank you, Councillor Parsons.
Okay, next, Councillor Tyndall would like to speak, please.
Councillor Robert Tyndall, please.
Yes, thank you. It's concerning 4.1.2, Shropshire Council Affordable Housing, no objections. First of all, can I just check that I understand that they have got to provide 15% as affordable, so that's 4, and then a financial contribution will be required for the 0.2 of a house, because 15% of 28 is 4.2. Can I just ask if that's correct? And then I got one supplementary after that, please, Chairman.
Thank you. Would you like to answer, please, Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Tyndall's entirely correct there. That is the calculation, and there would be 4. There would be a level of provision on site of 4. And where we get a fraction, we then take the remainder as an affordable contribution. So in this particular case, there's a section 106 agreement attached to the outline planning permission that's already been granted, which has set out that requirement. And that's why on here what you see obviously is 4 complete units being provided, and we will take an additional contribution, as Councillor Tyndall is quite right.
Sorry, to represent the 0.2.
Correct. That's it. Yeah.
Right. Now, leading on from that, if I may, Chairman, is the question of bungalows or lack of them, and I just wondered whether, if it's perceived that the lack of bungalows is a defect, could we possibly suggest that the 2 times 2 bedroom affordable dwellings are in fact bungalows? Just an idea.
Okay, do you want to come back on that, Andrew, please?
Yeah, in one respect, to be blunt about it, this is the application we have in front of us, and this is what we have to consider. Obviously, there's an issue there as to whether or not essentially there's a need for bungalows, which would justify doing anything other than approving the application that's in front of you. There's no particular evidence has been submitted that would actually support that, albeit there may be a very understandable desire to include bungalows in the scheme, but it would be very difficult to argue against it without some clear evidence that there is demand for bungalows.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Tyndall.
Okay,
Sorry, Chairman, yes, thank you. It's just a pity then that the people who want bungalows haven't produced the evidence of the need for them.
Correct. Thank you, Robert.
Councillor Motley has indicated you'd like to speak, please, Chair.
Thank you.
Motley, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I rather echo Robert's thoughts about the bungalows, actually, because there certainly was enough mention made of bungalows, both by the local member and by the parish council, that would indicate there was indeed a need for bungalows. It does seem to me that this is a wasted opportunity, I have to say, on this site. So I'm not very happy about that. The other thing is lighting. Now, please, bearing in mind the light pollution that is growing all over the country, is there any way in which somebody can look rather more creatively at a lighting scheme rather than just sticking up standard lamps and putting bright lights on the top of them, thereby adding, generally, I would have thought, to the discomfort of the neighbours who are having to also put up with a lot of noise, dust and general inconvenience when the site is being built. So I would ask that that a lighting plan is carefully prepared and presented, which does not necessarily include nothing but tall standard lamps. There's no reason why low-level lighting couldn't be appropriate in some parts of this development, and I think that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Have any more speakers, please?
No other indications at the moment, Chair.
Okay. Does the planning officer wish to come back on any points, or?
Yeah, Chair, just on 2 points, partly in response to both the points that Councillor Motley has raised, but also Councillor Parsons. One thing I would say about this application, in terms of the type of housing that's now proposed, there is a marked change compared with the original 14 or 15 house scheme that was approved, which it's probably no surprise to hear it had a lesser number of houses on it, but they were on the whole considerably larger in terms of size. So what this application is doing is changing the mix of housing proposed to introduce, if you like, I wouldn't say necessarily sort of, I hesitate to use the phrase starter homes, but they're certainly at the smaller end of the scale, and intended to diversify the house types that would be built on the site compared with the original proposals. As far as Councillor Motley's point about lighting is concerned, I have to say it's one I have a lot of sympathy with. We don't have much in terms of detailed policy expressly related to lighting about how we control it, but we do have in policy in CS6 and MD2 issues about amenity, and I think it's probably fair to say that we have been seeing proposals for lighting schemes where I think increasingly there is concern, and I'm certainly personally aware of one case that I'm dealing with at the moment where I think it's quite right that we do ask more questions about the appropriateness of lighting schemes, and that they are not overdone, and that they're appropriate for the areas that they need to be in. And I think we've got scope under existing policy to look a bit harder at that. Obviously, we've got the new local plan coming forward, and it may well be that we can put something further in terms of detail into that. But I think the point about lighting is a well-made one.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Does Kim, the solicitor, wish to add anything?
Nothing further to add, Chair.
Right. If there are no more speakers, please can I have a proposer and a seconder for the application, please? Can I have a proposer, please?
Okay, I'll do it.
Thank you, Simon.
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you. We could do a proposer and a seconder.
Okay, can we just clarify, Councillor Harris, what you're proposing?
To accept the approval of the how's it worded? Sort of for the scale layout. Although I'm disturbed about the layout, I think it is what it is, and I think the application seeks planning permission for reserved matters for the appearance, landscaping, and layout. I propose we accept that.
Thank you.
That's what I'm seconding, Chairman, is grant permission subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Shynton. We will now take the vote. The solicitor will read out the names of the committee members present and entitled to vote, then confirm the results.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, if I could just remind that only those members that were present for the whole item can vote. So if you could please indicate whether you are for or against the recommendation. Councillor Evans?
For.
Councillor David Turner,
For.
Councillor Andy Boddington,
For.
Councillor Simon Harris,
For.
Councillor Richard Huffer,
For.
Councillor Cecilia Motley,
For.
Councillor Tony Parsons,
For.
Councillor Mad Shanton,
For.
Councillor Robert Tyndall,
For.
and Councillor Tina Woodward.
For.
Okay, thank you, Chair. That's unanimous.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much for that one. So that's unanimous. As I had indicated to speak as a local member, the next item, I will hand the chair to the vice chairman and will not participate in the next item except to read by statement. That's very unanimous. Thank you. So I hand over to the vice chairman.
Thank you, Councillor David Turner in the chair. We now move on to item 6, single plot exception, affordable dwelling, Lower Lane, Wiston-Stowe. And can the planning officer please present this item?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. Richard Fortune, Principal Planner. This application is for a single plot exception site affordable dwelling at Lower Lane, Winstanley. We'd like to draw members' attention to the update sheet that we received last night in terms of the additional comments from the applicant and also confirmation of the legal service and notice on the agricultural tenant. If you could perhaps turn to the slides first, please. First slide shows the position of the application site in terms of the area that's marked red to the sort of northeast and east of the main group of buildings that constitute the village, which you can see the northern edge of on that same slide. Turn to the next slide, please. This again, this block plan shows the site layout. It shows the position of the intended access, the T-shape being the footprint for the bungalow, and the smaller rectangle being the detached garage that is proposed forward of the front elevation. Also indicated in the, if we look at the green area to the rear of the bungalow, the garden area, in the top corner, top right corner there, is the position of the proposed package treatment plant to serve the bungalow, and the blue dotted line to where we can see an arrow on the east side. That shows the connection to an existing water course for the output from the package treatment plant. Next slide, please. This is the elevational treatment of the bungalow. The top right view is the south elevation, which shows the on the left hand side the front projecting gable and on the right hand side the rear projecting gable, and what we can see there is the indications of solar panels on that roof area. The actual materials proposed for this bungalow are a stone plinth to a height of just below the window sill level, facing bricks to the walls and tiled roofs. And the bottom left view shows the gable apex area that we timber boarded. And obviously you can also see that the chimney feature on that on the building. Next slide, please. This is the layout of the building, again showing the 3-bedroom accommodation with a living room and kitchen diner and the bathroom facilities. Next slide, please. And this is the garage that's set forward of the building, which you can see on the layout block plan. Next slide, please. This is the view into the site from the existing vehicle access looking eastwards, and now we can see on the right hand side vegetation that does form the sort of the southern boundary of the site. Next slide, please. Again, another view from that gateway, again just panning around a little more to the south, picking up the vegetation on that southern boundary. Next slide, please. And again, a further turning around. The roadside hedge is what you can see on the extreme right-hand side of the property next to the gate, and it just shows this sort of small sort of field shelter building that will be removed. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is a view looking down back towards the village in a southwesterly direction. The access to the site will be on the extreme sort of left-hand side of this picture, and so this is the view down towards the village. Next slide, please. Again, similar views to the previous one in terms of scale, it's just slightly veering more to the south. And the next one, please. And again, just bearing around again, we can just see above the hedgerow there in the distance the roof forms of some of the buildings that are on the edge of the village. Next slide, please. This is the view looking in the opposite direction, looking northeast along the lane out of the village. The site would be on the right-hand side, where you can see that the date on the photograph in that location there is the approximate position of the access into the site. But it does give an indication of the sort of the open character of the land in that location. Next slide, please. Again, this is again veering more towards north. Again, it's the views looking in that direction away from the village. And the next slide, please. And this is a view looking westwards from the site. There is a farm building there. You can just see the roof of next to the tree there, which was visible on the location plan, about 100 metres away across the field. Right, thank you. So the situation here is, in terms of the application, the applicants do meet the eligibility criteria for a single plus affordable dwelling, and the actual design of the property, its scale and form, are ones that you know, do conform with what we would look for for single plus affordable dwellings. The issue that officers have here is concerning natural location and whether that meets the locational criteria for single plot exception sites. In our type of affordability of housing adopted supplementary planning document, it says that paragraph 513 that these exception sites must be demonstrably part of or adjacent to a recognisable named settlement. Westanslow is considered to be an example of a tight-knit settlement, and the officer views the site is too detached from the existing dwelling groupings to be part of that settlement. It would in effect be in an open location, which in the officer view would also detract from the character of this part of the area's standing natural beauty. It's therefore for that reason, which is set out at the start of the report, the officer recommendation is for refusal. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Could the solicitor indicate whether there are any public speaking statements, please?
Yes, thank you. First speaker is Councillor David Evans, local member, who's indicated he would like to read his own statement.
Right, go ahead, please, David.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, committee. Affordable dwelling, Lower Lane, Wistonsstow. I have known Mr. and Mrs. Jones for a number of years. I support this application for an affordable dwelling in Wistonsstow. Mrs. Jones is a local person, lived in Wistonsstow all her life. She went to Wistonsstow School and later went on to Stretton School. Mr. Jones is a local person and has a job in Wistonsstow village. Mr. Jones has worked in the village for a long time. They would like to build their own home and secure the future for their children. Wistonsstow is a school that their children attend that saves travelling. The village is a community shop, a church, a village hall and a public house. Village life needs to continue, and the fact that these two people are local and have young children, I think it is only right that they should continue village life. Wistonsstow is in need of affordable houses for young people who wish to remain in the village and where they've been brought up. So therefore, I urge the committee to support Mr. and Mrs. Jones and grant this permission to build their own home on the edge of Wistonsstow village. It is not that far out of the village, and I fully support the application. They got local needs, local people, so therefore I shall now leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Do we have any further speakers, please?
Yes, thank you. We've got Amy Henson, the agent, who says this application is seeking planning permission for the erection of a 3-bed bungalow under the council's single plot exception site policy for the applicants and their family, who have strong local connections, having lived in the village for many years. Andrew and Kelly's children, as you are aware from their letter, all attended the local primary school, with the youngest still in attendance. Andrew and Kelly currently live in tied accommodation with Andrew's job. This is not a suitable or potentially secure long-term solution for the family, and they understandably wish to own their own home. Kelly is actively involved in the school PTA and holds a key for the school, opening it up on a daily basis each morning. Kelly works for the NHS based in Ludlow and relies heavily upon support from her parents for childcare due to shift work. Her parents live within the village, a few minutes walk from the application site. The council's housing enabling team have confirmed their eligibility and housing need in compliance with the single plot exception site policy. The application site is located less than 3 minutes walk to the local school, 2 minutes 47 seconds to be exact, and the rest of the local services and facilities available within the village hall, pub, church. In our view, a sustainable location which encourages the occupants to use sustainable modes of transport rather than the car. The application site has support of the local member, the parish council and 17 local residents who have taken the time to comment on the application and show their support to Andrew and Kelly. The objections raised primarily relate to notification of the application when it was submitted and from one family. I can confirm that we contacted the objector and made them aware of the application via the formal Certificate B process as soon as we became aware of their comments and interest in the land tenant back in October, as per the planning process. The visual impact of the development will be kept to a minimum given the single-storey nature of the dwelling, the gently sloping gradient to the site and existing mature hedgerows along the roadside, which will remain unaltered by the proposal. This view is confirmed in paragraph 2.1 of the officer's report. We are confident that the site can be adequately drained for surface and foul water, and this would be controlled via a suitable drainage condition requiring percolation tests and approved details assessed by the council's drainage team. The site is not identified as being within an area of flooding. The Environment Agency maps show it to be within flood zone 1 area. Low risk of flooding where residential development is acceptable. The site is located to the northeast of the village, and whilst just outside the main density of the village, it is characteristic to see houses located on the outskirts of Wistonstow, a much further distance from the village centre than this site. Andrew Kelly and their family have been found to fulfil the local connections and housing need criteria for an affordable home. They wish to remain living in the area where they have friends and family. They are actively involved in the community and provide and benefit from the support of family members within the village. We sincerely hope you can support the application and thank you for your time. Okay, that's all the public speakers. Thank you, Chair.
That's very good. Thank you. Has the planning officer got any comments on any of the statements that have just been read out?
Thank you, Chair. No further comments.
Thank you very much. Right, we've got some speakers from the committee: Simon Harris, Andy Boddington, Tony Parsons and Mad Shinton. We'll take them in that order. Councillor Harris, please.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. I'm just looking at this on Google Maps and looking how far the plot is away from its nearest farm buildings. I'm slightly dumbfounded that as people can, I can't see how people are saying it's too far out of the village where you've got scattered properties all around the Roman Road, basically a lot farther away from it. So I don't accept that in any way, shape or form. I don't accept what some of the people have said in 4.2.3. A better alternative could have been put forward, also lessening the cost of connection services. How much it costs connection services has got nothing to do with the locals. That's whether they can afford them or not, I'd have thought. And on that note, I'm all for young families stopping in villages and towns. If this is the only way that young families can afford to stop where they want, then I'm all for this. And if it needs somebody to propose it, then it would be me to do it when we come round to deciding that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Will you put your microphone on mute, please? Councillor Boddington.
Thank you, Chair. We've been here before, haven't we? Several times over the last 5 or 6 years. We have, in the core strategy CS5, CS11, a statement that small-scale development will take place primarily in names settlements. However, the SPD, which Richard referred to earlier at 5.13, says there must be demonstrably, I'll say that again, demonstrably part of an adjacent to a recognisable named settlement. Now, we've had this clash many, many times, and by and large, we've approved the applications for single affordable plot housing developments, which are outside known settlements. And I think we should do it again. This ticks all the boxes except for one very restricted policy. This is a low-key development in an area where it doesn't cause harm, where there is strong local support. So I would like to second, if Simon Harris actually proposed a motion, I would like to second his motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boddington. If you can put yourself on mute, we'll now have Councillor Tony Parsons, please.
It looks like Simon Harris and myself were doing the same thing. I've been looking at the Google map for the village as well, and I would regard this as being a very linear ribbon type village around the main road there. And if you go from the very south of the village, from Roman Fold and the Plough, through to the farm at the very north end of the village at the minute, that farm has a looks like a poultry farm adjoining it. And my looking at the map, this development would be no further north than that farm. It is separated on the right hand side from the nearest house, but in terms of the village, it's no further north than that farm at the very north end of the village.
Thank you, Councillor Parsons. We now have Councillor Madge Shinton, please.
I agree with everything everybody else has said, because I feel we have two key workers, in my view. This is an exception site with all the restrictions that will have on it. And as far as I'm concerned, I see no reason why we shouldn't allow this development to go ahead. Thank you.
Now have Councillor Robert Tyndall, please.
Thank you. A comment was made that the site is in with the Shropshire Hills A and B, and I've now found it at 4.1.5, and they offer no comment either way. So I'm not fussed that this is going to be a new dwelling in the AONB. And I support what everybody else has said. I looked at Google Earth and considered just, as Councillor Harris said, sorry, Tony Parsons said, that there's development to the west, which is no further south. I'm getting my north and south all muddled up, but going north and south along the Roman Road or just off it, it is a sort of slightly ribbon development, and I don't think this will make it worse. I'm quite happy to support this, the proposal that we approve the application.
Thank you, Councillor Tyndall. I'm very familiar with the location. I've got some family connection there. I equally feel that this is precisely the kind of proposal that we ought to be looking at sympathetically, and I agree with other comments regarding the scattered nature of the settlement. So, has the planning officer got any points he wishes to clarify or add in the light of comments that have been made?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I think in terms of obviously the issues over a settlement where it doesn't start and stops, that's clearly a matter for judgment, and I hear what members say on this point, and it is correct that we will approve single plot affordable dwellings in locations where open market properties would not stand any prospect of getting consent. So that is understood. If members are moved to approve the application, can I ask that the recommendation be subject to the appropriate Section 106 agreement to ensure the dwelling remains affordable in perpetuity, and there be delegated authority to officers to attach the appropriate conditions which are likely relate to matters in terms concerning materials, drainage, ecology and highways. Thank you. And also, so obviously, also those are standard conditions we do have, again, linked to ensuring that properties remain affordable. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Does the solicitor have anything which she wishes to add or clarify? I mean, we haven't actually had a firm proposal yet. Probably better to wait until that comes through.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say the same as Richard about obviously it would have to be subject to the 106 agreement and any delegation for attached conditions. And I was also going to ask if Councillor Harris could just clarify whether or not he did actually make a proposal. I think he said he was going to make a proposal.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, having listened to everybody else and pretty well agree with everything, then I will make a firm proposal that we accept single plot exception affordable dwelling together with the recommendations just spoke to by Richard Fortune.
So in terms of clarification, this is a recommendation to approve the application contrary to the officer's recommendation.
Yes.
Councillor Boddington?
Yes.
Fine. In that case, we will take the we'll take the vote, bearing in mind the comments about section 106, etc. Would the solicitor please read out the names of the committee members in turn?
Okay, thank you. Again, I'd just like to confirm that only those members present for the whole item can vote. So if you could please indicate whether you vote for or against the proposal to accept the single plot exception site contrary to the officer's recommendation. Councillor David Turner?
For.
Councillor Andy Boddington?
For.
Councillor Simon Harris?
For.
Councillor Nick Hignett?
For.
Councillor Richard Huffer?
For.
Councillor Cecilia Motley?
Abstain.
Councillor Tony Parsons?
For.
Councillor Mad Shinton?
For.
Councillor Robert Tyndall?
For.
And Councillor Tina Woodward?
For.
So we had 1 abstention and 9 to accept the proposal.
Thank you very much. So the planning application is approved. Could somebody get Councillor Evans back in again, please? Is he still connected, please, Tim?
Yeah, he's still showing as being on. I'll just check.
I'll just send him a text. I'll take advice from officers, but do we want to press on regardless, or is that constitutionally unacceptable, or indeed discourteous?
It actually looks as if the chairman's frozen at the moment.
Well, I'm pretty
Vice Chair, so I think I'd continue.
Well, I'm pretty cold myself, so I wouldn't mind getting a move on. David's saying he can't unmute. He probably needs a bit of technical support. But shall I press on? Is it the wish of the
Chairman, Vice Chairman, do you think you could just crack on, please?
Okay, fine.
It shouldn't take very long, should it?
I wouldn't have thought so. So, in terms of the appeals, I'm assuming that Richard's dealing with item 7, and I'll leave it to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to run through the appeals. First one on the list is the Old Chapel, Stretton Westwood. This was an appeal against it's seeking to vary a Section 106 agreement to remove the requirement for paying the affordable housing contribution. That appeal has been dismissed. The inspector accepting the obligation still fulfills a useful purpose. Second one is the changes the public house to residential at Longville Arms, which committee looked at back in February this year. That appeal has been allowed. The inspector concluded that it has been adequately demonstrated that on the balance of probability, the appeal poses no longer a viable enterprise. Third one on the list is application for 2 split level dwellings at the Hawthorns Orchard Lane, Hanwood. The delegated decision, appeal has been dismissed. Outside the boundary in open countryside, did not enhance character countryside, extending built form into open countryside, and no urgent need for housing in the nearest community cluster. No social or economic benefits to outweigh the conflict with policy. The fourth one on our list is a application that was at committee in December 2019 for 2 dwellings at Easter Schoolhouse, Upton, Cambridgeford. Appeal dismissed. Inspector accepted as a cluster settlement, but the development cannot be construed as infill. Encroachment into a very rural part of the OMB, and the current policy is working to provide necessary housing within the community cluster as a whole. And therefore, he saw the limited social and economic benefits not to outweigh the conflict with policy and intrusion in the OMB. We then got an appeal that's been lodged against the refusal of a prior notification barn conversion. This is one that the council under delegated authorities refused on the grounds that the extent of the building works exceed that of the appropriate to be deemed a conversion, and concerns also about the design in that particular case. We then have a application that was considered at committee in July this year at Crimond for a replacement dwelling at Church Stretton. It was approved by committee, but the appellant is taking exception to a number of the conditions on the grant of land permission, particularly those relating to drainage, the wanting details of the roof solar or wet raise, landscaping, details retaining walls, requirement to retain bat and bird boxes at the property. It's also challenging the restriction on annex use for the annex elements, and also that to withdraw privilege dwelling rights. So that will be is with the planning inspector to consider. The council having submitted its case on that one. We then have a application that was another appeal for 4 dwellings. It's East Bow School, Canaan. This is one that again we've pursued on the grounds that it not being a settlement is identified for overmarket housing as a community overall cluster. We then have a appeal decision for a free range egg production unit at Crookville Farm. Again, appeal has been dismissed. This is one where the inspector concluded that there would be an unacceptable impact on biodiversity interests, and that effectively there was not enough information to say that there would not be significant harm to those interests and what's required under the Habitat Regulations Assessment. You also had concerns about the impact of the spreading of manure on the living conditions of dwellings in the locality. And where he concluded that the economic benefits of farm diversification did not outweigh the harm to biodiversity or residential community impacts. It's one where there was a claim for cost by the appellant and a counterclaim for cost by the council, and the inspector ruled that he did awarding costs for neither party, considering that the council acted reasonably and the appellant was not unreasonable in bringing the appeal. We then have a application which was for a self-built dwelling southwest of Ponsford, Shrewsbury. A delegated decision, appeal dismissed. Effectively, the site is not infill. It would be when reinforcing development in location, damaging the countryside area between Ponsford and Ponsbury, and would not satisfy the environmental role of sustainable development. The inspector gave very little weight to the self-build argument being put forward in that particular application. And that's the summary of the 9 cases, Chair.
Thank you very much, Richard. Do any members wish to comment on the appeals? Otherwise, we can note them. No, fine. The date of the next meeting is on Tuesday, the 15th of December at 2 o'clock. I would like to thank everyone for their participation in today's meeting and their full attendance. I'd like to thank officers as well for their support. I know that one or two would have been holding their breath a little bit, and I saw one or two flashes across the screen that said that my internet connection was unstable. I think one or two of us had difficulty. So thank you all very much, and I wish you a pleasant evening.
Thank you, Chairman or Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thanks, everyone.